And even though a lot of educators are apparently against a high dose test cycle, everybody that I talk to that have been in the field, has competed, or has done crazy stuff with their physique to the point it's highly impressive and they're still healthy, most of those guys prefer high test. Most of those guys prefer high test. Okay, so long story short, and it might sound like a little bit of a sales pitch, but bear with me. I felt good. I looked good. My blood work was great, all things considering, right? It's never going to be perfect being on that much steroids and growth hormone and ancillary and whatnot, but it was still pretty freaking good compared to all of the other blood work results which I've gotten in my life for comparable dosages running steroids in combination. And recovery was Wolverine-like. I was not taking TB500. I was not taking BPC157 or GHK copper or ARA290, just tests and GH. I couldn't get sore. I could train twice a day, 6 days a week, taking one day off to kind of, spend time with my wife. But if I wanted to, I think I could have trained twice per day, every single day for months in duration. I took a deload every 8 weeks preventatively during these couple of months that I was ramping up the testosterone dose, but I never felt overtrained. A couple of times I took an extra day off. So instead of training 6 days a week, I trained 5 days a week, whoop-de-doo, or maybe sometimes I didn't feel like going to the gym in the evening and I would skip that workout. But man, I felt indestructible. No injuries, no tendon problems, no issues with my knees or elbows or chest. Everything ran so smoothly. And now looking back on it, I wonder why I ever changed, honestly. So even though a cycle of test and primo is still a quite nice cycle, I'll be honest about that. So, and I was 5 years younger, so, wear and tear on the joints and the overall stressors in life, of course, that's going to accumulate. So it might sound like a sales pitch, but again, it's one of the best cycles I've ever done. And, looking around me with guys that are running similar protocols, again, most of them are in good state of health, good mental state, very happy-go-lucky, and not anywhere trend-like. And well, the physiques of the people running such a high dose, or at least admitted it to me, those physiques kind of speak for themselves. So let's go over to the blood work results. We'll discuss them briefly. Otherwise, this is going to turn into a very lengthy video. We'll look at the complete blood count. You see that my hematocrit was 48%. So that's not anywhere alarming, just like you would see on a dose of, let's say, a gram of test and a gram of primo or boldenone. You would get an hematocrit of, let's say, 52, 54, 56% with high red blood cell count as well. White blood cell count was not abysmally low like you usually see with DHT derivatives or progestogenic 19-nors like primobolan, masterone, trembolone, or mint, or nandrolone. And all the other complete blood count parameters were perfectly normal as well. Moving over to the urinalysis, specific gravity was low. Again, I was going hydrated for my blood work. And again, nothing really to see here. All of the other urinalysis results fall within normal parameters. Then we have the blood chemistry. Blood glucose was only 68 milligrams per deciliter. Now, I'm pretty sure I wasn't running Lantus at the time. I ran that with consecutive cycles, but not at the end of 2018. So again, I was on a ketogenic diet, training twice per day, doing cardio, and a lot of posing practice. So maybe that's the reason why my blood glucose is low. And otherwise, it's because I took 500 milligrams of berberine before bed. Blood urea nitrogen is not surprisingly high, only 18.1 milligrams per deciliter, even though my protein intake at the time was, let's say, 300 to 350 grams per day. You see that my serum creatinine is a little bit elevated, 1.49 milligrams per deciliter, which is to be expected when you're training twice per day and you have a significant amount of muscle mass on your frame. Uric acid fall within normal parameters. Creatine phosphokinase, 3,300. Again, training 2 times per day and taking maybe a little bit of clenbuterol at that time. I can't exactly find my notes if I was taking clenbuterol at the time, but it wouldn't surprise me. But if anything, it was probably a low dose of 20 micrograms per day, which is also known to increase your CPK levels, but it's probably from doing so much work in the gym every single day of the week. C-reactive protein with, let's say, 9 milliliters or maybe 9.5 milliliters of castor oil and benzyl benzoate and benzyl alcohol on a weekly basis. C-reactive protein is only 1.7 milligrams per liter. Gamma GT levels, nice and low, so there's no indication of issues with my liver. And also not running ezetimibe or, the basic over-the-counter cookie cutter ways to control your cholesterol levels. total cholesterol 185 milligrams per deciliter, HDL 51, on 2.5 grams of steroids, an HDL 51. Then you guys are pooping on a high-dose test cycle. Again, an HDL of 51 milligrams per deciliter and an LDL of 118 milligrams per deciliter. You would never, ever, ever in your life see an HDL and LDL on a similar cycle consisting of testosterone, masteron, primo, winstrol, anavar, trembolone, nandrolone, ever. Even with ezetimibe, your HDL will be 20, if not lower. So again, for all of the guys that were on a cycle like this, look at the blood work results. My blood work results don't lie. My lipids are almost perfect. My lipids are representative of a guy that's running TRT plus. And my C-reactive protein is, even though it's higher than I would like it to have it, I prefer 0.5 milligrams per liter. It's still quite favorable on a high sensitivity test. So no systemic inflammation and no risk for cardiovascular disease as proven with my CT scan a couple of years later, where I had a calcium score 0. So, liver function tests. I'm not running any oral steroids. All of my liver function results are within normal parameters, except for the liver enzymes, the AST and ALT. And that's because I was training twice per day. And these transaminases, these aminotransferases, are also found in skeletal muscle, like I mentioned a million times before. So, I wasn't running any TUDCA. I was running NAC 2,000 milligrams per day. But I was not running any TUDCA at that time because, again, it wasn't available to me in Thailand. And importation up until the last couple of years was quite difficult when it comes to particular over-the-counter supplements that weren't sold on HiHerb or, let's say, bodybuilding.com. And that brings us to the hormone results. Look at that free testosterone, baby. It's off the scale. And that's to be expected with conventional testing at Bria Labs. You can't get a higher level than the testing equipment allows it for. And we don't have liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry testing available here in Thailand. And that wasn't really discussed 5 years ago. So free testosterone, 119 or over 119 nanograms per deciliter, and total testosterone over 3,460.8 nanograms per deciliter, even though they say 34.608 nanograms per milliliter here. Easy conversion, just multiply it with 100. So these levels are off the scale, which is to be expected. Again, I would have loved to see a liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry high sensitivity test for free testosterone and total testosterone. But maybe I'll have to run this much and then go visit Merrick Health in the United States and tell them that I had an accident injecting that much testosterone. It's certainly not TRT approved. Vitamin B12 was slightly out of the reference range, which is probably due to a B100 complex that I was supplementing with. And you see that on this 8 ampules of Bayer testoviron and 8 tablets of Pfizer exemestane, aromacin, my serum estradiol is favorable, I would say, 55 picograms per milliliter. Not alarmingly high, but not low to the point your lipids get affected and your sex hormone binding globulin get affected. And you see by the sex hormone binding globulin results, 30 nanomoles per liter. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. My libido was great. And if I didn't train that much, my wife would have been worn out. Were we married at that? Yes, we certainly were. We certainly were married at the time. I would have worn her out if I didn't go to the gym that much twice per day because I was brimming with energy. Progesterone is 0.22 nanograms per milliliter. That's been declining over the last couple of years. I didn't check my DHEA sulfate at that time because this was around the time that I started experimenting with DHEA and pregnenolone supplementation, and with consecutive cycles, I started adding that in. Prolactin was a little bit on the low side, but not alarmingly low. You see that my hemoglobin A1c, the glycolated hemoglobin, is nice and low, only 4.5%, indicating very good glucose homeostasis, very good glucose management within my bloodstream following a ketogenic diet and doing daily fasted cardio, 2 workouts per day, and posting practice and taking a little bit of berberine before bed. Growth hormone levels, not administering any exogenous growth hormone the day before or the day of doing blood work results, 4.35 nanograms per milliliter. So that's the growth hormone that I produced endogenously. And IGF-1 also probably coming from endogenous stimulation from the endogenous growth hormone, 230 nanograms per milliliter. It might have been higher on the days that I would actually administer exogenous growth hormone 4 IUs per day. Now, I'll be the first one to say that this blood work result isn't as inclusive as the recent results which I've been taking over the last couple of years, right? There's no cystatin C, but based on my latest cystatin C results for my kidney function, I would say that at this time, cystatin C was also nicely in range. There's no lipoprotein, like lipoprotein A or ApoB or ApoA markers in this blood work results, but based on my total cholesterol levels and HDL and LDL, I suspect that those are pretty much in range as well. Of course, there's a lot more room for cancer markers and heavy metals in the bloodstream and serum electrolytes and all that good stuff. But again, I would do my blood work quite frequently on these high dose test cycles, and I didn't see any reason based on previous results to test those as frequently. These blood work results, again, are better than consecutive cycles I've done that have been a lot more complicated. Let's look at how it looked that time. Now, unfortunately, the pictures that I took exactly on this blood work results, I no longer have. Again, I was storing them on only one external hard disk, which now I can't seem to repair because it dropped on the floor. Again, guys, I've sent it to a multitude of different services here in Thailand, but I'll bring it to the United States. When I go there, maybe I'll have better luck recovering my data. I do have some pictures from a month later after I dropped from 2,000 milligrams or 8 ampules of Bayer testavirine down to only 6, so around 1,500 to 1,800 milligrams per week, and then supplementing with a 90 milligrams oral Winstrol on top. Basically, a week or a couple days before the photo shoot, I ended up looking like this. So if you can add a couple pounds of extra fat mass and a little bit more water retention and less of this dyed hair that I had at that time, that's pretty much what I looked like. But these pictures are from the time that I was on test plus oral Winstrol. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the blood work results, which I took around the time I took these pictures, those results are actually horrendous, right? I was on Winstrol, so my lipids were all skewed and my liver enzymes were certainly a lot more elevated, and my HBG was probably bottomed out. But we're talking about this 2-gram test cycle, but I don't have pictures of it. So we'll take these pictures, but you'll have to add a couple pounds, a little bit more water retention, and less detail because I was only on test and about a month out, still having a lot more body fat at that time. Still, I think I look pretty damn good around this time. And, my lats and all these body parts, my quads, everything was flaring, everything was separated, everything was full as a house. I mean, look at this back, dude. I missed this. Honestly, look at this. And I wish I could get it back. I was a lot of work. I probably wouldn't be able to work and produce videos for you guys training that much and being that, depleted for such a long time. And even though I'm not really in stage condition, even looking like this takes a tremendous amount of work, and it does detract from the overall productivity. So I don't think I'll ever accomplish a look like this ever again. But, running a cycle in comparison, something similar, I wouldn't be opposed to it, assuming that I'm in a good state of health and stay in a good state of health. Look at this back, dude. Look at that haircut also. Man, I don't know what I was thinking. So these are the pictures of that time. I ended up looking a little bit better for a photo shoot I did a couple days later. Of course, I took a little bit of diuretic and I manipulated my carbohydrates and my sodium, and perhaps taking a little bit of anadrol and maybe even some Superdrol for the carb loading process. So I probably looked a little bit better, but these are the best pictures that I have as close at the time of the blood work when I was still on 8 ampules of Bayer testavirine per week. Even though at that time, again, I looked a little bit more fluffy and watery, and I was a little bit heavier than these exact pictures. All right. I hope this story was informative. Again, I have the blood work and the pictures to back it up, that this cycle was a huge success. And even though it sounds very, very simple, and even though a lot of educators are apparently against a high-dose test cycle, everybody that I talk to that have been in the field has competed or has done crazy stuff with their physique to the point it's highly impressive and they're still healthy. Most of those guys prefer high test. Most of those guys prefer high test. I'll leave it here. Food for thought. I'm not trying to promote high test, but this is the way it is. All of the guys that are freaks, high test. High test, high test, high test, high test. Okay. I'll leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. My sponsors, my affiliates, they're all there. And otherwise, they're on my website at vigorsteve.com. Bookmark that site and have a look at those ebooks in case you're interested in running cycles with bioidentical hormones only. Those ebooks are on my website in the shop section, and in the article section, I get a ton of articles for free. So bookmark that site. Do yourself a favor. and start reading for free besides all of the free videos that I have here on YouTube.